road on the way home. That's a lie. Up in nearly 20 plus years, the amount of property we have owned fall right in that range between $500 and $600. Haven't a single person ever moved out one of our houses in Baltimore. We have problems collecting rent, but they haven't a single person moved out of one of our houses. I got one man that lived in a house so long that he paid $600 per month and bought the house, my house, and started buying it again. But he hasn't moved out of the house. If Petersburg is going to be a 21st century city, we must have 21st century wages into the city. Petersburg is on its way out if we continue to allow people to flock into the city. Now, there's a place called the United something out there. Some 200 or 300 people are going to lose their houses out there. I've been getting calls, Mr. Stewart, do you have anything in Pocahontas to move on? What can we do? Well, I don't have nothing. Lady from Charlottesville called and asked me, sell her some land, she can build some houses and she can make money off her income. I told her I have no land to sell her. There's something about what's happening here tonight. No, it just doesn't get that smell. Something don't smell right. Something just don't seem right in the city. I believe in the planning commission. If the planning commission voted 0 to whatever and said no to this, what reason should the city council overturn? I don't believe in this. I don't think anybody family in this city got any more poor folks in the family than I got. But these houses, this apartment's not the right time, the right place. I understand calling them down. This is enterprise zone. This is an enterprise zone. This is a historical district. Let us maintain our historical district enterprise zone. Let's not allow people to come into our city and dictate us what direction we head. Thank you.
We are seeing a lot of development of these warehouse structures across the city, and there's been an issue with them being phased projects. And just in November, the Perry Street Laws came to you to change the housing requirement for their last phase to allow for below market rate apartments, and council at that time voted against it. We've got High Street Laws that its final phase has been sitting dormant vacant for quite some time. I have concerns and questions regarding the project that I think should come before council, and that you should take the time, not to vote tonight, but to consider the responses from the developer. I am opposed to the 9-10 ratio. In the proposed project, Mr. Woodward said that at the meeting at Pathways that 10 to 15 of the units would not have no outside light, meaning that they would receive light from corridor light wells. And that was a real issue with development of the Hinton Street project. There's a lot of opposition to that. And if you look in the proposed ordinance, under item 3, interior lighting and ventilation, it specifically states that each of the units shall have natural light from either exterior windows or windows facing an interior courtyard. So you've got 10 to 15 units that are not going to comply with the ordinance as proposed. If you're going to have market rate apartments and add the third floor, which still has to be approved by the Department of Historic Resources, what happens if Historic Resources does not approve that third floor, which will contain 13 penthouse units? How does that shift the numbers slide. If this is a phased project, how many phases are there proposed? What's the time frame for the various phases for completion? It's proposed that 10,000 square feet of the development will be commercial. Well, the Petersburg laws came back to you, and they were unable to develop any commercial use. And Mr. Woodford is a partner in that project. So I'm not sure how he thinks that he's going to be able to get 10,000 square feet of commercial out on the street when you can't get it up here closer to downtown. I would also ask that the sales contract comes back before council for approval, that there be a reversion clause if the developer can't get his financing in place, and they can be considered timetables for the development.
Thank you, Ms. Graham.
Michael Evans, 409 Grove Avenue. Good evening, Council, Mayor, City Manager, City Attorney. I'm going to stand up here and sound like a long boy. I attended this informational meeting on Thursday with Councilman Coleman at Pathways. I expressed how Petersburg needs something like this. Okay? Y'all can agree with me if you want. It doesn't matter. The reason why I expressed that we need something like this is because you ride around the city, you see the inadequate housing that people are living in. You see our school students living in inadequate housing. In return, it can affect their ability and their learning procedures during school. Okay, a lot of people say it'll bring the riffraff. But we don't have no more riffraff than what the other cities have. Okay? We're a city that is slowly turning around. And the people still keep saying, okay, so these apartments, because they have low-income housing tax credit. Well, look around. The economy is still not strong. Yes, there are more jobs. Okay? Petersburg is a low-income city. Whether you go like it or not. You go across the bridge into Colonial Heights, they have crime. They have riffraff. You go to Hopewell, they have crime. They have riffraff. So when people who say, we don't need this, we do. I asked the questions about the historical structure. It had no relevance. Ms. Peters was present, City Manager was present. What it boils down to is people don't like change. Well, it's got to happen. You have buildings, commercial buildings, that have the potential to generate substantial tax revenue back to the city. As many of you know that attend these meetings, we're in budget time. And you all know every fiscal year our budgets are tight and they get tighter. The more properties that are on the tax bracket, the more revenue that comes into the city. Henceforth, city administration can then begin the task to increase our city employee salaries, which are so desperately needed. I ask the council to look at the humanitarian aspect of this project and vote to move it forward.
510 North of Lady Road, Petersburg, 23805. I just want to ask the citizen living at night, do any of you all remember when that water broke down up on Crater Road? That's what we are paying for.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Good Lord.
My job is a tough job because I have to balance social economic factors with land use planning and creating a sense of place
place in communities where people want to live, people want to work, and people want to play. They want to hang out in the town, the city, and the place in which they reside, in which they pay their real estate taxes, in which they pay their mortgage or pay their rent. And sometimes it is very difficult. And when you look at this project, I want you to look at it in a sense of not just this project, but the bigger picture. The tax credit from VHDA was designed to allow affordable housing. And that's basically what this particular credit promotes. But it has also in other communities transformed neighborhoods. Mr. Cuthbert shared with you prior to me being able to share with you what my recommendation was to the Planning Commission. And my recommendation was to not approve the application. And that was based on the 90-10 mix. I stood before Planning Commission with the fourth phase at Brown and Williamson, and I supported that project because I thought it was an excellent mixed income, mixed use development. When that project came back for an expansion of the commercial uses, it was not to delete the commercial uses. I want to make sure that we all understand and we have a clear picture, because I'm working with the applicants on a daily basis. And so we vet this and we go back and we send them back to the table to crunch the numbers to bring to the Planning Commission and ultimately to City Council, a project that we feel that we should support and something that would be great for the city. On the last meeting we had with Planning Commission, I spent a whole entire day driving around the city of Petersburg. And I spent the day with a developer who had money in the bank. This is not a fly-by-night person that was riding through Petersburg to make money and to exit. He's been working with the planning department for about 6 months now, looking at a location in which he can invest. His product is single family because we have been promoting home ownership. The problem that we are having is home ownership today and building single family dwellings today is highly subsidized. Whether it's grants or the city's having to put in the money, it is subsidized. I took him through this community. And I drove around and I showed him the lots and I gave him my spiel and I said we demolished, these homes for a project. We have a collaboration effort and we're looking to do infill development. He said, Ms. Peters, and that's what he said, Ms. Peters. He said, I can see it, because I'm a visionary just as you are a planner by day. I'm a visionary, and I can see it. He said, but it's going to take some more action first. I'm not going to be the one to take that chance. And so we drove by this building, and he asked me, what's going on in this building? I said, well, the city owns the property, and we do have a case that's coming before the Planning Commission, because that was the day of the meeting. And he said, well, keep me informed and let me know what happened. I did find a location for him where he may be able to invest. But as I said, I wanted to paint the entire picture because as I'm driving, I'm working, I'm hearing what everyone is saying, but there are lots of people who come to Richmond, I know I'm in Petersburg, who comes to Petersburg from Richmond because they have businesses in Richmond and they love coming to Petersburg because they come here now to eat. Long Street is where they eat. So they'll drive down here for lunch and they'll swing in the planning department, but they operate businesses in Richmond. And they'll say, anything changing in that community you took me to? And I said, well, let me tell you what's going on around the corner. Well, let me tell you, I was like, okay, where's some development that's coming online? No one right now wants to be the first person. So I'm not saying this to sway you, but as I gave this speech to the Planning Commission, I told them we have to start looking at projects on an individual basis. It's not a one-size-fits-all all the time when you're doing these types of development. I do think that this project is very different from phase 4 over at the Brown and Williamson side. But my recommendation to the Planning Commission was to not approve the project because I wasn't satisfied with the 90-10% mix. However, I have to give it to the developer because he did go back to the table and he came back several times and said, well, this worked for you. I cannot tell the developer he cannot move forward through the process. And once he got to the point where he was at the number that he could work with and his investors were at the place where they were ready to move forward, we brought the case to the Planning Commission. So when you're thinking about these projects, you can't just apply the lab test and this is what's gonna happen. Developers and people with the money is looking to see what else is going on. And right now, no one is willing to take that risk to be the first. And numbers do drive the location or retail, as well as the per capita, but it drives people to come in. And this building was approved as market rate, and nothing happened. However, my recommendation to the planning commission was to deny it because as a mixed income and a mixed use building, I thought that we should do a little better than a 90-10% mix. Thank you for the opportunity to address you and to be transparent.
This particular project. Minimum, yeah, the minimum maximum.
Okay. All right, because my colleague is here, and I don't want to step over into Mr. Price's territory and talk houses, but I can do minimum and maximum, if that's what your question is. So the developer can establish a minimum income for tenants to live in this development. The maximums are established by VHDA. So they can say for a one bedroom, you have to have a maximum income of $18,000. I actually have been in contact with a few other projects that had minimum income established limits. And the recent project for our neighbor over in Prince George, Puddle Up 1 and 2, they did a VITEC project. And when I called and I talked to the manager, I said, discuss with me your process for qualifying an applicant. And she said, well, first of all, you have to have a minimum income. And she gave me the minimum income for a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and a 3 bedroom. In this particular development, your mix is only 1 and 2 bedrooms. So they do have that right to establish minimum incomes. And I had a conversation with James Chandler, who is the director of the LIHTC program at VHDA. And he did tell me that that information is correct, that a developer can, or an owner can establish minimum income. He went on further to say, though, that if it's a competitive tax credit, that when you're establishing your minimum, if you agree to set aside a certain number of units for persons that have vouchers or that are on a waiting list, because if you're in a competitive pool, you get points for that, then those minimums are established by VHDA. But that's not what this particular project is proposing. So they can set their minimum income for 1 and a 2 bedroom.
Any other questions?
Yes, I had a couple of questions, and we'll start with, how are the other market rates apartments faring with this project?
You want to know, when you said fair with this project,
I'm talking about in comparison, you're talking about Lawson Apartments, and we're doing the same type of work here. So if I'm looking at High Street Malls or anything else, or any other apartment buildings, how are they comparing? In the sense that if we're talking about affordable housing, as opposed to the market rate value, how are they comparing? Are they selling, are the units actually selling, are they full?
well, you don't need 100% occupancy for a project, to be valuable. I do have a printout of the multifamily developments in the city of Petersburg. So 1200 Aqua was 93.15% in May of 2014. Adamswood Apartments was at 98. Addison Crater was at 92. But I looked at this list prior to coming, and there were some that were at 50, 58%, 60%, 86.6 was Ivy Gates. High Street Mall Phase 1, they were at 80%. High Street Mall Phase 2, they were at 92%. Main Lofts was at 97%. The lofts at Dunlop was at 70%, but that number was back in 2013. Now the lofts at Dunlop, Mr. Shipley said that he was experiencing some up and down with soldiers moving in and out, so his numbers were going up and down. It hadn't been consistent for about a year. Oddfellows was at 90%, Mill Creek was at 98%,